marked up again, but it's so pretty and it's so unusual.
And it's sentimental.
Yeah.
And 1923, that's in 2 years, 2.5 years. It'll be 100 years old. It'll be an antique, right?
Wow.
Maybe I'll put it on, I'll take it to that antique show and find out what it's worth.
That's right. I forgot that one.
That's funny.
Yes.
Priceless, Joan.
Yeah,
It's
television.
priceless.
They'll tell me it's worth $10,000.
Oh.
And
I'll give it to Bethel. How's that?
Did they say snow is coming? Is that the rumor that there's snow on its way? Is there a rumor?
New York. It's in New York.
New York, but not here.
We may get the edge of the northeaster masses and get a couple of inches.
We had some
Okay.
flurries last night.
Yeah, we did.
I mean, nothing to write home about, but
forgot where we were, but someone said, "Oh, it's snowing." By the time I came out, oh, it was this morning. They said it was
this
snowing.
morning.
By the time I came out, it was gone. Hello, Dawn. Hello, Bob. Hello, Georgia.
Get this to work.
Yeah, Rochelle in services this morning. I feel like the menorah lasted about 30 minutes. Alva's.
Don't ask that one.
Oh, wait, I'm unmuting.
I have to talk to you
There we go.
today.
Now, what is that, Rochelle?
So that she had one candle that burned really fast.
Yes, there was one candle. Hello, Harvey. Yes, there was one candle, Rochelle. I'm telling you. Those always bother me. There's one candle that burns faster than the others.
Rabbi, we had such a good time last night watching. And Mr. Zinger was just terrific.
The lines I heard was variety show. You know, it should be like a cabaret style. You know, it was fun. We had a lot of fun. Glad people came. Amy did all the work. I just showed up. So thank God. Thank God for my wife.
I'm glad people like the
That's
jokes.
right.
I
Oh, and
like
the
the
jokes.
jokes.
That was the best part of the evening, those horrible jokes. Someday you're going to have to tell us the ones that didn't make the cut, that were even worse.
They were so
Yeah,
bad.
there were ones that didn't make the cut because they were even worse.
I would love to hear those.
There's bad jokes. There's worse. Hello, Linda. Hello, Ray. Very nice. Okay, so how should
Let's get started.
should we get started? Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Okay, here then I'm going to start getting us quieter, but always unmute yourself. Here we go. There, everyone's quiet. Do we need?
Not
Not yet.
for the blessing.
Oh, okay. We definitely. Well, for which blessing then? Like studying blessing or starting the text blessing?
Whatever. Oh, no. I meant the text.
The text. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are going to share screen. So let me remove these participants view so we can see everything here. Let me get the chat out of the way. So now that'll make my shared screen a little better.
Hello,
Okay.
Bernice.
And we're going to be sharing this screen. Okay. Share. Okay. And but I figured out how to do this. I made it bigger. Remember, so I can see all the people on the top.
I don't remember.
Okay. Well, I did. Okay. Here we go. So, but now I don't
think you
remember.
forgot.
Oh no, that's it. I figured it out. See, you put them all across the top of the
neat.
screen.
Oh,
See,
look
now I
at
can see a
that.
lot more people. Okay, and then I
Oh,
move this down.
nice.
So,
Hi,
so now
Sybil.
let's just make sure. I'm gonna ask Joan and Irv. Joan and Irv, can you still see the blessing? Blah blah blah. And Rochelle saying yes. Okay, so the idea is that I can actually see everyone's face on the top. So now we can do both. You
Yeah,
see?
that's perfect.
Isn't that nice? Okay.
Well done.
Okay, now they just need to cure this thing and we don't have to, all the stuff we learned how to do, we never do again. Okay, until 100 years from now. So can you imagine 100 years ago trying to do this?
I cannot. And you think about when that Hanukkah is from. That
Yeah,
Joan has.
Jones Hanukkah is
Was right
from
after the last
1923. It was the
pandemic.
last pandemic, right? It was the leftover of the last pandemic. Very good. Okay, so we're gonna get started, right? Today we're doing the blasphemous history of Hanukkah, right? And who's starting?
You.
I'm starting. So I'm going to take the first one, okay? I'll take the first text. It's on your screen. If you don't have it on your screen and you printed up some paper, because Google went down twice today, which is a new thing for Google Gmail, Google Drive. If you were on Google Meets, if you were going to like elementary school, you may have lost school today. So they've been having some trouble. But
that was international hackers.
Yeah.
They went into the treasury too.
Yep.
Wow.
It's all falling
Wow.
apart now, Harvey. This
That's
is
right.
Yeah, that's yeah.
This may be our last session.
And if you get an if you get an email from me asking for
Oh,
money
that's right.
in Uganda, send it to my house, not Uganda. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, here we go. We're getting started. So there's a blessing we say for 8 nights. It's listed on your computer. And I'll read it in transliteration, which is in the Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. I forgot the tune. I share Hanukkah. Okay, pray. And what do we say?
You got me so messed up, I couldn't even save you.
I went to 3 different tunes, none of the right tune. That's I'm the son of a cantor. I never got the ear. Okay, what are we saying 8 nights in a row? Praised are you, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ruler of the universe, asher kadeshanu b'tzotav v'tzivanu, who commanded us through your commandments, v'tzivanu, and commanded us lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah, to kindle the Hanukkah lights. It's an old rabbi joke. How does God command us to light the Hanukkah candles when it's not in the Torah, it's not in the Tanakh, it's not in the Hebrew Bible, and yet we have this commandment. We even talked about last night, right? We're like, well, 613 commandments. With the 613 commandments, if you've been in any of our other classes, are 613 commandments that come from the Torah, right? Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, 613 commandments, and yet we have got a command. God commanded us to light the Hanukkah lights, and God's not even when we get into the book of Maccabees, God's not even in the book of Maccabees, which is not one of our books, which many people don't know. We're going to do it today.
And it was kind of interesting. I think Alex looked it
That's
up.
me, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I said, how many? So 613 is this is extra, right? And it turns out, yes, this is extra. There are 7 extra
7
that are outside of the Torah.
Right. It's like hand washing. So God never commands us to wash our hands, but I do. But they add that to one of the 7 laws, and this Hanukkah candles is one of the 7 laws.
So that's really 620,
which we learned last night, by the way. So we've been rabbis for 25 years, kind of thing, alive 51 years, kind of thing, and we learned last night that some rabbis argue there's 620 commandments, and this is one of the 7 commandments the rabbis added, which they weren't supposed to do. Okay, so I say, there was a question last night. Anyone who came on last night, we said, is the story of Hanukkah in the Bible? And the answer is no, it's not in our Bible, but it's in their Bible. So if you open up your drawer at a hotel, and you know you're bored and you want to read the Bible, you may find the book of Maccabees in your hotel drawer, but you will not find the book of Maccabees in our Bible, which my joke is, it's in their Bible, but not our Bible. Hanukkah is in their Bible, not our Bible, but they don't celebrate it, but we do. It's in a book called the Books of the Maccabees, which is the Apocrypha, which is a fun word to say, Apocrypha. Apocrypha are biblical books that didn't make it into the Bible. I kind of just say it didn't make the cutoff date, right? So the Catholic Bible comes later than the Hebrew Bible. It made the cutoff date. The latest book in our Bible is probably the book of Daniel. If you asked what is the latest book that made it into our Bible, the book of Daniel is, many people say. Book of Maccabees is written actually not so far away from the book of Daniel. So about, what do we say, 160-ish BC, 167, didn't make it. So it's in the Catholic Bible. It's in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Bible. It's canonical. It's law for the Roman Catholics, the Anglicans, and the Orthodox Christians, but not all Christians. So I can't just say the Christian Bible. So it's not in all Bibles, but it is in the Catholic Bible. So Hanukkah is even mentioned in the New Testament. All right, I'm not supposed to say call it the New Testament because that means there's an old one. But you know, it's in the Christian Bible. The book of John mentions something written around 70 to 110 CE. Okay, and who wants to read some Christian Bible for us? I want to raise their hand. I could call on someone. There, John. Irv, I got you. I found you. Irv, you're unmuted. We can hear you. You can see John 2:22, written about 70, 110. read us a little something and I'll explain how this gets there.
Then came the festival of dedication at Jerusalem. It was winter, 23, and Jesus was in the temple courts, walking in Solomon's colonnade. The Jews who were there gathered around him, saying, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly."
Okay, so forgetting the Jesus part and the Messiah part, this festival of dedication at Jerusalem in the winter, all the commentators, the historians, all Christian commentators say this is what. Remember, Jesus was Jewish. Talk about a Jewish boy who made good. Okay, so most famous Jew in history.
Made his mother proud.
Made his mother proud, right? Doctor, rabbi, lawyer, son of
Jesus.
Jesus. Okay, God, Messiah. So, but this dedication, the Christian scholars claim and say that this is, and we're going to see it later on. You're going to see it much more coming up in the Book of Maccabees and the Talmud. But this is Hanukkah. Jesus is celebrating Hanukkah. It would have been hundreds of years, right? If 157, 67 BCE, you're talking about, even if this is written in 7110 and it's not really written with Jesus, you're still talking about 100, 200 years later, they've been doing Hanukkah. They're still getting gelt, probably no dreidels. Okay, so let's go back in time to how it all started. The Book of Maccabees, written around the late 2nd century, 160, 150-ish, now a little later, maybe earlier. Remember, it's not written at the time, but the Book of Maccabees. So the Book of Maccabees is not our book, but a great book to read, okay? And it's missing a lot of the stuff. So who's going to be my Book of Maccabees, chapter 1, verses 11 through 15 reader? Okay, who's a hand? I'm going to see a hand. I'm going to see a hand. I'm going to call on someone. Carol, you are the one. Yeah, even if you scratch your nose, you get called on. Okay, Bernice, I saw your hand right. You're my next reader. Okay, Book of Maccabees, chapter 1. I just wanted to give you a little Maccabees.
Chapter 1, verses 11 through 15, late 2nd century BCE. In those days, certain renegades came out from Israel and misled many, saying, "Let us just go make a covenant with the Gentiles around us. For since we separated from them, many disasters have come upon us." This proposal pleased them, and some of the people eagerly went to the king, who authorized them to observe the ordinance of the Gentiles. So they built a gymnasium in Jerusalem, according to Gentile custom, and removed the marks of circumcision and abandoned the Holy Covenant. They joined with the Gentiles and sold themselves to do evil.
Okay. Now, Rabbi, good job. Wait, say it, Carol.
That's not very nice.
Okay. Not only is it not very nice, this is not the Hanukkah story. This is actually before the Hanukkah story. This is not the bad king. What is going on here? Who can quickly tell us what do we see going on right here? Remember, this is not the Hanukkah story. This is before the Hanukkah story. Okay, so who's doing what here? All right, so give me someone. Yeah, something. Okay, Carol.
Assimilation.
Huh?
Assimilation.
Assimilation, right? It's not, the more we stand out, the worse it is for us. Let's be like them. And, and obviously the author of Maccabees is not happy. We also know what's about to happen, but it wasn't being forced upon us. We were willingly joining upon them, right? Joining in on it. And this is a no-no in Judaism. Now, there's a rabbi in town who goes around teaching things that are, controversial. Not me. I usually disagree with him, but he teaches a class and he calls Hanukkah a civil war. Because when we get into the Hanukkah story, there is a Jew against Jew thing going on. And we're going to get into the Hanukkah story in a second here. But there is a Jew against Jew story. There is a bad guy, Antiochus. There's some bad armies, the Syrian Greeks. But there is this, traitor kind of Jew thing going on. There were Jews. The whole story starts with Jews killing Jews, and then they kill the Syrian Greeks, and then there's a war. But I'm not going to call it a civil war because, there were people who followed along willingly is what the book starts with, that we willingly, assimilated. Then it's going to be forced assimilation. And then we will have the very first, many historians say, the very first war for religious freedom, the story. So we're going to flash forward to Hanukkah, the story of Hanukkah. Now, Hanukkah can be spelled 256 ways. Someone did the math for me, 4 to the power of 4. You can spell Hanukkah 256 ways. But what does it mean? One thing, to dedicate or to rededicate. What is it? In the winter, as we saw in the New Testament, the 25th of Kislev. Okay, the rededication. Huh?
No, I was pointing to Miles because Miles was helping me remember with my dead memory, the 25th.
The 25th of Kislev. Thank you. The rededication, the purification of the Holy Temple by Judah, aka Maccabee, Aramaic for hammer, but some say Maccabee is Micha, Mocha, Baalim, and I take the first letters. Who is like the rallying cry of the Maccabees? Who knows? It's a great story. 164 BCE, 167 BCE. What happened? 3 years earlier, before the Hanukkah story of the rededication of the temple, okay, 3 years earlier, the king Antiochus IV Epiphanes forbade Jewish practices, circumcision and kashrut, ended the temple sacrifices, dedicated the building to the Greek god Zeus, and sacrificed a pig on the altar, desolating sacrilege. So let's move to 4. Okay, and I try to make these a little easier to see. Here, I'll make it a little smaller. Use my fingers. Okay. Oh, too small. Okay, never mind. I'll just scroll back to 4, 4, 4, 4. Here we go. Who's going? Okay, Bernice, you are my willing volunteer. Thank you for. Are you really reading Torah for me tomorrow?
Sure.
Thank God for you. Okay, because I am falling apart. Okay, so here it goes. The very first Hanukkah, First Book of Maccabees, chapter 1, verses 53 and something, late 2nd century BCE. And if you notice this word right there, you can even say Kislev if you want.
Okay.
Remember the U and the V, they don't know how to translate. This is Sepharia, by the way. Go on.
Okay. My audio and my video are not synchronized. So that's why when you ask for a volunteer, my hand goes up half an hour after you ask.
Oh, you were the first to volunteer, but I saw you.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
Yesterday, where the answer that person was giving me was to the last question I was asking, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I would ask a question, and they would answer the last question. Okay, you're good now. We hear you.
Okay. Now, the 15th day of the month Kislev, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire. And whosoever was found with any book of the testament, or if any committed to the law, the king's commandment was that they should put him to death. Thus did they act by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 5th and 20th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised.
Now, if anyone actually knows the book of Maccabees, the very next sentence goes into a very graphic detail on how they killed these women and children and hung them around their necks. Really nasty. So I'm glad I described it to you because I cut it off. Okay, so good. So this is bad.
Miles.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So it said at the beginning, the 145th year. What are they dating that year after?
There's so many times in the Bible where they say, usually it's, my answer is not going to be a good one. Usually it's the king, it's like the 40th year would be of the kingship, but the 145th year obviously is not of the king. And it's funny, it's so close to 160 something, so it sounds like 140. There's no way it's marking it from 0 backwards, right? BCE. No one knows. When you're living in BCE, you don't know you're in BCE. So they couldn't have said BCE. So don't think that. It can't be a king. I don't know. It could be like exiles 586, 70, doesn't make any sense. So it's got to be a moment, 145 year, 586 BC. It can't be of the Second Temple. Could it be the Second Temple? No, there'd be hundreds of years. So the answer is a very long answer. I don't know. Because this is in the Catholic Bible, I'm sure they have an answer. 140. It's a typical question. We know that we've kind of dated 160, right? 166. Right. So if you did 167, you have to add in this case, 167 plus 145 and got to 300. So 300-ish BCE, what happened is the question. It probably was a reign of someone. It could even be the reign of Syria.
Maybe Alexander of Macedonia.
That's, by the way, Alexander would be a very good example, would be a time to mark of the year. They remember, at the time, you think that's the new world. And so you would say that's year 0. Right? Year 0 is about to come, but they don't know it. Yeah, they thought that year, like they have a BCE and a CE as well. They marked it at 145 years before this moment. So Alexander would make a lot of sense. That's it. So very good. I'm accepting your answer and your question and your answer. So these actions that Bernice read are met with widespread Jewish resistance, a militant uprising, guerrilla warfare, right? The small defeat the many, defeating the Syrian Greek forces, the Seleucid forces. Judah seizes control of the temple on the 25th of Kislev. By the way, did you notice the 25th of Kislev? It's kind of like Tisha B'Av. We like certain dates. 25th of Kislev is allegedly the same day on which Antiochus desecrated its altar 3 years earlier. So the day that the temple is desecrated is the same day the temple is rededicated. Judah removes the desecrated altar, rededicates a new one. Hanukkah rededicates. People initiate an 8-day festival. Who were we on? My mom?
Your mom.
My mom. We're rabbis, right? So our job is to humor our parents. So my mom goes, I learned this great thing. Why Hanukkah's 8 days? Now we've been teaching that for 25 years, but we're like, oh, wow, we've never heard that before. So, but many people, I think it's sometimes hard to kind of make the connection. We're going to see it today. People initiated an 8-day festival modeled on the festival of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles.
And, I was thinking about this today, and I was thinking that, because as you said, I've known this for some time, but I was thinking about, when you think about Sukkot is actually very close to Hanukkah. So it makes sense that we weren't able to celebrate Sukkot. And then it was just a few months later that when we recaptured the temple and purified it, that is the one of the reasons as to why it's 8 days is because of the 8-day festival of Sukkot, which really wasn't that far away.
No,
so it does make sense.
And I always taught it like it was historical, but it turns out it actually is written in these books that it is Sukkot or it is Tabernacles. Because if you rededicate it on the 25th of Kislev, you say, what holiday did we miss? Now, by the way, you may look in the Bible and say, but isn't Sukkot a 7-day holiday? You may say that, right? Because 8 days is a strange number for a holiday, right? Because Passover is 7 days, Sukkot 7 days. But look closely, we have an 8th day, the 8th day of assembly. Shmini Atzeret means the 8th day of assembly. Sukkot ends up being for us, by the way, if you do Jew math, Sukkot ends up being a 9-day holiday if you take Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. But back to it, so 7 days plus Shmini Atzeret is 8 days. And that is not only historically, we're going to find that it really is kind of proven that they are taking this Feast of Tabernacles and doing it in the winter. Remember what we saw with in the New Testament, the Feast of Dedication of winter. Because we couldn't use the temple. So there's a new celebration. It's not called Hanukkah, but the Tabernacles of the month of Kislev. right? So it's Kislev Tabernacles. So here we go. You want to see it? Just in case you don't believe us, it's in the book of Maccabees. Here we go. Book of Maccabees. Okay, now we're in the second book of Maccabees. The second book of Maccabees is kind of like the Deuteronomy of Maccabees. It retells the story and keeps on going. So let me take a new reader. Who's going to be my new reader? Okay, I see Rochelle. Rochelle, I'm coming to you. Rochelle, we can hear you. Second book of Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 1, 161 BCE-ish.
The Jews in Jerusalem and in the land of Judah, to their Jewish brethren in Egypt, peace and salvation. God bless you and remember you with his covenant with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and give you a whole heart to fear him and to serve him with all your heart, with all your soul. God will open your hearts to reflect on his Torah and keep his commandments, and will give you a blessing and peace. If only the Lord will listen to your prayers and be merciful to you, and from hardship he will save your lives. This is our prayer for you for all times.
It's kind of neat. You know, Rochelle, we've been talking about we should start Torah reading with a prayer. Look at how this book starts. That's just a prayer, right? It's an opening prayer. All right, now let's get to the real stuff.
In the year 169, the time of the reign of King Demetrius, we wrote to you concerning all the hardships that came upon us, with the betrayal of
Yeshua.
Is that Jesus and his cohorts in the Holy Land. They sinned in the kingdom of Judah. They set ablaze the gate to the courtyard. They spilled innocent blood in the land. We prayed to the Lord our God, and he heeded our voice. We offered sacrifices and fine flour for the mincha offering. We lit the lamps and placed the showbread on the table of the Lord. We requested of you to celebrate the dedication of the altar with us during the month of Kislev. It was in the year 188 they returned, and they wrote for them these words.
Okay, so we have a dedication, Hanukkah, of the altar during the month of Kislev. And so we have the institution of Hanukkah, right? We have Hanukkah, the original Hanukkah. But why is it 8 days? We're about to get the word 8 days, and even see, look it down here. Can you see when I highlight something, by the way? Okay, good. So get ready. I've been saying for years, well, like kind of like what we just did. We're like, it makes sense. Not only does it make sense, it's actually in the book of Maccabees, but we don't read the book of Maccabees because it's not our book. So, only when we're preparing for class do we're like, oh, it's in the book of Maccabees. We're not as smart as we thought we were. So why is Hanukkah? So some scholars have connected Hanukkah and Sukkot theologically. They said it's a second Sukkot, Hanukkah. They say that we lived in temporary dwelling places and journeying, and that we adapt into a new celebration, making a good way to the purification of the place. Don't worry, let's just do it. Who's doing the next reading? Someone, who are we calling on next? This is your own free time. Joan, okay. Right, the longer you don't have volunteer, the longer you don't get to eat. Okay. Okay, I have to.
Oh, wait. Okay, we're doing number 6, right?
Number 6, 2 Maccabees 10, and now we are going to find, again, all the words are weird, Kislev and Maccabee, but you're going to get the festival booths. All right, here we go.
Now, what is 10 for? What is that 10 there?
Oh, sorry. Those are the first. So what I did was I stole this from Sepharia, and that is chapter 10, verse 1.
Oh, okay.
Actually, that should have been a 1.
10.
And then
Okay.
Numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
That should have been a 1.
Okay. Now, Maccabeus and his followers, the Lord leading them on, recovered the temple and the city. They tore down the altars that had been built in the public square by the foreigners, and also destroyed the sacred precincts. They purified the sanctuary and made another altar of sacrifice. Then, striking fire out of flint, they offered sacrifices after a lapse of 2 years. And they offered incense and lighted lamps and set out the bread of the presence. When they had done this, they fell prostrate and implored the Lord that they might never again fall into such misfortunes, but that if they should ever sin, they might be disciplined by him with forbearance and not be handed over to blasphemous and barbarous nations. It happened that on the same day on which the sanctuary had been profaned by the foreigners, the purification of the sanctuary took place. That is, on the 25th day of the same month, which was Kislev. They celebrated it for 8 days with rejoicing in the manner of the festival of booths, remembering how not long before, during the festival of booths, they had been wandering in the mountains and caves like wild animals.
Take it.
Oh,
There you go.
therefore, thank you. Therefore, carrying ivy wreath, wands, and beautiful branches, and also fronds of palm, they offered hymns of thanksgiving to him who had given success to the purifying of his own holy place. They decreed by public edict, ratified by vote, that the whole nation of the Jews should observe these days every year.
Good reading, Joan.
Oh,
Joan,
yeah, it's one thing I can do. That's about it. Yeah.
so Joan, how did they celebrate Hanukkah?
I'm trying to figure out what holiday are we talking about here?
This is Hanukkah, the original Hanukkah, but how did they
It's like
celebrate it? Did they light a
They're,
menorah?
they're doing hakafot with
They're
a
doing
lulav.
processions with lulav and etrog, right? They're
Yeah.
in Hallel, and hymns of thanksgiving. This is the original Hanukkah was taking a lulav and etrog and
That's amazing.
processions. Very
Do you
good.
teach that to the kids? Do you teach that to the kids? This is
No, you're kidding me? We're teaching this to you, and you're teaching it to us. We're learning this with you. This is live learning.
I think we should reinstitute a second Sukkot because it would be a lot less expensive
And you know what?
than
Sukkot,
Hanukkah.
Sukkot is like 1 week after Yom Kippur. And, I always call it like, if you do Sukkot, it's one of the greatest holidays, but you're so worn out. It would be so much better to do it in the winter too. But, okay.
Except
Yes.
dwelling in a sukkah in the winter would
Oh.
not be so good.
Yeah,
Might
you're
be a
right.
little chilly.
They're not dwelling in sukkahs here. They're just.
so we're not singing Ma
Okay, well, I
Or.
need to take my card in here.
1 second. What's that, Joan?
We're not singing Ma'asur at this
No
point.
mouths or no candles. We're getting to that the very next sentence.
Okay.
We're going to get into the lights now. Okay, so by the way, what do we not see here? We don't see they found oil and they lit it for 8 days. We don't see latkes. We don't see donuts. We don't see menorahs. We don't see elf on a shelf or mensch on a bench. We see Sukkot in the winter is what we see. So here we go. Let's see. So we're about to we're going to get to the Mishnah, the Talmud, the Jewish Book of Law, 2nd century CE. The first Hanukkah is not a festival of lights. Okay, that's going to come. But here, so we're going to try to find the lights now. Okay, we're going to try to find out how we get to a festival of lights. I don't know if this is going to happen. Well, this next one, number 7. Let me look real quick. I think it's just altar 8 days. If you don't trust us, gold, gladness, Judah, 8 days. Okay, fine. They built nothing good there. Judith, I don't think adds anything. Just to understand, Book of Judith, we're not going to even read this one too. The Book of Judith is not in our Bible. It's apocryphal, the Book of Judith. We have a Judith, Yehudi, a Tamar. We have Tamar. We have Sisera. We have the scene where this woman gives guy a Sisera, the general milk, puts a spike through his head. The Book of Judith looks very much like it. She's praised. But what the argument here is the Book of Judith is also celebrating the winter tabernacles. you would see branches in her hand and garlands of olive, and you would say, oh, that sounds like Sukkot. It was actually celebrated in the winter. Throw Judith away. Okay, this is good. And this is one of my favorite guys. He's Josephus. Raise your hands. How many people have heard of Josephus, studied Josephus? Okay, about half of you. Josephus is awesome. All right. Now, Josephus was a Jew who lived around the destruction of the Holy Temple, and he was a historian, and he converts out of Judaism to save his life. He writes down what happens, describes the destruction of the Holy Temple, and it gets saved in the stuff we have today. And he writes, very much in support of the Jews. So some Jews didn't like him because he converted out. It was to save his life. But Josephus is what we get to see, like outside of the Bible and outside of the Talmud. We get to see like eyewitness, right? And this is Josephus. He wrote a book of Antiquities, chapter 12, about 93, 94 CE. So when I say the destruction of the temple, I meant the second temple, 70 CE. And he describes what's going on, like boots on the ground. All right. So,
and what I read about him, which I was surprised about, was that he is the only one that refers to the Maccabees as the Hasmoneans.
All right.
And it's only in his writings.
Huh. All right. Well, Josephus is a cool guy. All right. So here it goes. This is Josephus, and this is about 9. So if we're trying to figure out when does Hanukkah become the festival of lights, and by this time, so you can't say it was he didn't create it. He's describing it. So who's going to read me some Josephus? Who did I see a hand that I didn't call on yet? Okay, let's see. Who's going to call on? Who am I going to call on for Josephus? I'm going to call on. Hey, Miles, can you see this? Can you read it?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
I'm ready.
Okay, since you can see it, and I know you always say yes to me. You get to read chapter 12, verses 7 through nothing. Chapter 12, verse 7, Antiquities, Josephus.
Now Judas celebrated the festival of the restoration of the sacrifices of the temple for 8 days, and omitted no sort of pleasures thereon, but he feasted them upon very rich and splendid sacrifices, and he honored God and delighted them by hymns and psalms. Nay, they were so very glad at the revival of their customs, when after a long time of intermission, they unexpectedly had regained the freedom of their worship, that they made it a law for their posterity, that they should keep a festival on account of the restoration of their temple worship for 8 days. And from that time to this, we celebrate this festival and call it lights. Aha, there's the lights.
First time we see this festival of lights, all right?
I suppose the reason was because this liberty beyond our hopes appeared to us, and that thence was the name given to that festival. Judas also rebuilt the walls around about the city and reared towers of great height against the incursions of enemies, and set guards therein. He also fortified the city Bethsura, that it might serve as a citadel against any distresses that might come from our enemies.
Okay, so we've got Josephus, and he's calling this holiday, which again, you see 8 days, you saw, by the way, the feasting, no pleasure. The Sukkot was the holiday of holidays, joy upon joys, but now we've got the festival of lights. Okay,
interesting.
Doesn't say why.
Yeah, he must have gotten it from somewhere. He doesn't create stuff on his own.
Right. When we study Talmud on Wednesday mornings, we always say, or Shulchan Aruch, one of my favorite books is the Shulchan Aruch, 500-year-old book of customs or code of Jewish law. I don't believe the author of the Shulchan Aruch created anything. He's describing what's happening at that moment. So we can't say Josephus didn't make this up. He's describing, he's a historian. And from that time, we celebrate this festival called Lights. So at some point, it became the Festival of Lights. Now, we're going to get the story we know.
He says, I suppose the reason
was because of the light, the hope, right? So he refers to Hanukkah as the festival of lights because of the new hope the temple's purification gave to the Jews. It was light and hope and darkness. Remember, we studied, well, if you're in one of my Thursday class, we studied how it's the darkest time of the year and now light's coming. Dawn, we're coming to you. Dawn, I see your hand. Unmuted. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry.
There we go. Okay. So my question is, what's the date on this?
The date of Josephus is about 90 CE, which is about 70 years after the destruction of the Second Temple. And
about 200 years after.
About 200 years-ish, right? 50, 150 plus 90, 250 years after Hanukkah. Yeah, so he's describing, Jews celebrating this winter festival, but he does describe it as lights. Now we are going to get the Talmud, which again, in the Talmud, we're going to get the thing that everyone else knows. The story we all know is coming next. But what the argument would be, how did the rabbis make up the story? Because one of the arguments would be the rabbis made up the story. One of the questions we can ask you is, why do you think so? Because no one has the answer. But it was a festival of lights at some point. It does become a festival of lights. Is it, as Josephus guesses, he's like, maybe it's because it's, he doesn't say it's lights because they light menorahs. He's like, maybe they call it festival of lights because they light in darkness. It's hope.
But I'll throw something out here. So we're going to read the Gemara in just a minute. And what is the Gemara but the oral law, right? The interesting thing is that Hanukkah is not mentioned in the Mishnah, which is 0 to 200. It is not mentioned. It's not mentioned until the Gemara. And they put up 500. Yeah, like my Hanukkah, like what is this? So it's almost as if it's not that well known.
No, they're advertising it.
What's kind of interesting is it's the oral law, and really they're putting out story after story, right? Like it's kind of passed down from generation to generation. So when I remember when we learned this text in rabbinical school, it was kind of like, look, and you'll see, we'll read it. And it's like the rabbis created the miracle of the oil right here. This is where the miracle was created. But, for the first time, I'm thinking, well, it's an oral law and it's, who knows what was passed down.
Right. You have possibly 300 years. We don't really, it's hard to mark. The Talmud is written over 1,000-year period. But if it's not written in 200 CE, and then by 500 CE, it's written in, that what you see is that Hanukkah goes from second Sukkot, that's for sure, right? So rededicate the temple, and then second Sukkot. Then by 70, 90, we see it called Festival of Lights, and yet nothing to do with lighting or oil. Light was hope. And then as we evolve, or as we change, by 500 CE, we now have oil and lights and menorahs and all that other good stuff. And does it mean it didn't happen? Yeah.
And if we look at what was happening in history, in the time that the Mishnah was written, in the 0 to 200, the Romans were in charge. Yeah. And if they had focused on the miracle of Hanukkah and this, small people fighting against a mighty army, that could have been a very bad thing.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's the idea that we have to move away from, we can overthrow a big army. We better change the miracle or we're going to get killed. Irv, did I see your hand raised? Okay, wait, sorry, go ahead. I muted you. I was unmuting and muting. Take your time. There you go.
From what Josephus seems to be saying, he's talking about the darkness of oppression.
Yes.
Going to the light of freedom and liberty.
Yeah.
Light would certainly fit in there.
It has nothing to do with candles, right? It was, and he's like, and it must not have been that. We always say Hanukkah was not a major holiday. Yeah, Christmas wasn't a major holiday until relatively recently. So yeah, he's like, and they refer to it as the Festival of Lights, but it's not. And then you could imagine someone said one day, hey, let's light something. Let's light a candle. You know, like you can almost picture if the evolution. Did I see Miles with your hand raised too? Let's see. Nope. Okay.
Should we read the text?
Let's do it. So most rabbis start with this text. We thought it was cheating to start with the miracle of Hanukkah text without understanding this is the first time the original doesn't have it, right? That just no one has it. All of a sudden at 500 CE, you get and by the way, those of us who study on Wednesday morning, it was like an aside. We're talking about what you notice the book it's in. The book it's in is Shabbat. We are talking about lighting Shabbat candles. And they go, oh, do we do the same thing for Hanukkah candles? Oh, yeah, we do the same thing for Hanukkah candles. Oh, by the way, what is Hanukkah? Like this, and then they come up with this thing that didn't seem to exist before.
Maybe.
Maybe. Did the rabbis make it up? Maybe. Okay, who wants to read? Who wants to read this? This is the most famous. Georgia. Where's Georgia?
Do you feel like reading?
Where's Georgia? I found Georgia. I can unmute you, Georgia. You are unmuted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia.
Okay. The Gemara asks, what is Hanukkah and why are lights kindled on Hanukkah? The Gemara answers, the sages taught in Megillat Ta'anat, on the 25th day of Kislev, the days of Hanukkah are 8. One may not eulogize on them and one may not fast on them. What is the reason? When the Greeks entered the sanctuary, they defiled all the oils that were in the sanctuary by touching them. And when the Hasmonean monarchy overcame and emerged victorious over them, they searched and found only one cruse of oil that was placed with the seal of the high priest, undisturbed by the Greeks. And there was sufficient oil there to light the candelabrum for only one day. A miracle occurred and they lit the candelabrum from it for 8 days. The next year, the sages instituted those days and made them holidays with recitation of Hallel and special thanksgiving and prayer and blessings.
Okay, so
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Well, explains why we do Hallel, explains that we put Al HaNisim, this prayer, in the Thanksgiving prayer. Actually, it's in there's a Thanksgiving prayer in every Amidah. It's in Hebrew, Modim. And Amy was like saying, and notice the candelabra, what is this? And there was sufficient oil to light the candelabra. That's the 7, when you get off the freeway and go by Carnegie Synagogue, they have a menorah, right? It's 7 candles. While you're making the left to get to Mount Lebanon, if you count the candles, that's not a Hanukkah menorah. That's a 7 candle candelabra. That's a menorah. That's why some people don't like calling it a menorah. It's 7 candles, and it's the eternal lamp. But eternal lamp just meant it's the lamp that you light eternally, and you light it at night, actually. So we have a Chanukiah, right? A 9 candle or 8 candle candelabra, but this was the menorah. This was the eternal lamp. This was the 7 candle candelabra. This was the menorah, and they light it for. But this miracle, right? So this is a new miracle. You can see why, and they're saying, some rabbi in the Talmud says, oh, this is why we call it the Festival of Lights. Now remember, Josephus, a long time earlier, had a different reason, much more poetic.
400 years.
Huh?
400 years.
Possibly, right? Now, the Talmud, there's no dates on the Talmud. Again, we don't know. We can say that the Talmud finished in 500 CE. This could have been said 500 years earlier, for all we know. It's we can only know what we know. We know when it's finished. So, rabbinic Judaism, the rabbis create perhaps the miracle, and Rabbi Amy just gave one good answer. One answer is we're surrounded by a lot of people 500 CE, and we don't want to be advertising, hey, we beat you, especially the people who are trying to proselytize us, right? What is the war of Maccabees was, Hellenism and Greeks and Romans. You don't want to mess with these people. They're not nice.
And it's interesting how the story kind of changes depending on what time we're in, right? So for Israel, for modern day Israel, this is a story that not the oil story, but the military victory is something that really speaks to modern Israel because religious freedom, the small army against the more numerous one.
Right. You actually say that prayer, Al Hanisim, the prayer on miracles 3 times a year, Hanukkah, Purim, and Israel Independence Day. That in our prayer book, if you go into any Siddur Sim Shalom, the Orthodox leave out the Israel Independence Day because that's too new. But we have it say 3 times, the victory of the small over the many. And by the way, all 3 stories, God is not mentioned. We read God into the victory, of that. So, but I've heard other reasons why the rabbis didn't like it. It's a little political. They didn't like the Hasmonean dynasty, the Maccabees. Right. That there's a question whether some people, everyone looks at them like the Messiah, like they read it, and can they take the priesthood on their own? Are they Davidic? Do they come from the David line? And so there was a movement away from let's not give them all the credit. Let's give it back to God.
Right. And then not only additionally, they became rulers. They
I heard they weren't nice, right?
So it's not
like Gunga Din.
Priests are not supposed to then become rulers. They are not supposed to take the kingship, and they did.
Right. It was kingship. It was a kind of a mixture of kingship and it's a very messianic kind of thing. If we think about Bar Kokhba, someone who didn't win, if Bar Kokhba won, well, we'd have a whole nother holiday. But the idea is that there are some questions about, and now let's go back to the original story from the book of Maccabees. They're bloodthirsty. You don't want to be on the bad side of the Maccabees. It's because they killed the Jews. Yeah. By the way, if you were a Jew who supported, gymnasiums, you're also in the target list of the Maccabees. One of my favorite rabbis, Yochanan ben Zakkai, during the Romans, during the fall of Jerusalem in 70 CE, had to sneak out of Jerusalem in a coffin. He wasn't hiding from Romans. He was hiding from Jews, zealots, right? Maccabees are zealots who would have killed him for making a deal to keep Judaism alive. By the way, if he didn't do what he did, we may not be here today. So Yochanan ben Zakkai, who they would have said is a traitor and deserves to die, saved us to where we are today. So there is a question, let's move away from the whole bloodthirsty, violent guerrilla warfare, and now let's, hug donuts and oil.
But who doesn't love a good donut?
My waistline doesn't love it. Weight Watchers likes it. So that's such an unhealthy holiday.
That is true.
I read something that Hanukkah was a dairy holiday. I want to go back to that Judith thing we skipped. So Judith was about giving milk. Right. Okay. So our story in our Bible is that, we have this, you give milk to Sisera, the general, and he goes to sleep, and then you put a steak. So Judith, same story, the putting of the steak. So the milk of the Judith story makes Hanukkah a dairy holiday, but it's
too convoluted.
It is convoluted. Joan, go ahead. We're done with
years and years ago. It's coming back to me, and I don't know why I did it, but I made a cheesecake at Hanukkah.
It was a dare. We think of Shavuot as the dairy holiday.
Yeah.
And again, we could spend an hour why is that a dairy holiday? No one really knows. Hanukkah was a dairy holiday, Joan. And so cheesecake, if you think about it, right, what do we put on our blintzes? Sour cream. That is kind of a strange thing it's a dairy holiday. Usually you don't put corned beef on, that does sound good, by the way. Corned beef on, by the way, a corned beef on your latkes sounds great.
Oh, I thought you were saying corned beef on the blintzes sounded good.
No, but it's not a blintz. It's not a blintz holiday, but it's definitely a latke holiday. But it's definitely a dairy holiday. I never thought of it until I was studying for this. That Judith was a very dairy book. Again, the milk and beheading, a lot of beheadings. So
beheadings and milk. I don't know.
Beheadings and milk just goes hand in hand, if you want to put a bad guy. And by the way, so in the Hebrew Bible, it's a general. In the book of Judith, it's a king. She kills a king with that. Rochelle, coming to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to reinstitute Hag Habanot.
Which one?
Hag Habanot.
Okay, what it's
on the 6th day of Hanukkah.
Okay.
The 6th night of Hanukkah is a night for glorification of the daughters, the women, in honor of Judith.
Interesting.
wow.
And you
It's a North African holiday.
Neat.
I've never heard that.
Yeah,
And
me
now you're
either.
seeing the connection. So Judith, you may think it's a stretch that we take a book that just mentions something in the book of Judith and then make that into the holiday. But we do that all the time with what Megillah we're going to read. If the Megillah is set in that holiday time, we're like, oh, that becomes the Megillah for that holiday. So the book of Judith connects the holiday of Hanukkah. Then you've got Judith, you got women. By the way, 6th night of Hanukkah should sound a lot like Rosh Chodesh. There's a moon involved, right? Yeah, very confusing to some people. If you ever have Yortzeit on like the 7th or 8th day of Hanukkah, it might not always be on the 7th day. It can actually change because sometimes it's a 2-day Rosh Chodesh and sometimes a 1 day. This year it's a 1 day Rosh Chodesh, but 6 nights. So look at, I've never heard of that holiday, but you now connect a women's holiday, Judith, dairy, 6th night of Hanukkah, Rosh Chodesh, at a holiday. Chag, what? Say it again.
Habanot.
The holiday of the daughters. Love it. Yeah, okay. Rochelle, you taught us something new.
Yeah.
Chag Habanot. I like it. All right. More. So I expect you all to do head cheese. Oh. Okay. So that isn't that neat?
Georgia said,
Okay.
should we eat head cheese to honor Judith?
Right. Which I'm not so sure is actually cheese, right? As I
think
Head cheese is that cheese.
mix. It's like that's the non-Jewish kishki. It's but now you can do what my mom did to us, and you tell your kids, did you know that it came from Sukkot? It was a second Sukkot. It was Hanukkah, and that's where the 8 days comes from. And chicken. I don't have a problem that the rabbis gave us the miracle of Hanukkah after Hanukkah existed. I believe that's the joy of Judaism. Now I'm going to get on my step stool or soapbox for a moment. Judaism has survived for 3,000 years-ish. We don't know why they lit candle. No, actually, we might know. From studying Shabbat Talmud, we may know why we light Shabbat candles on Shabbat. And you know why we lit Shabbat candles on Shabbat? Because it was dark and we didn't want to run into the table and eat our Shabbat meal in the dark. We have lights now. We don't need Shabbat candles to see where we're going, and we don't hit our one table and sit in the cold dark and eat cold mushy food. So now if you said to a Jew, why do we light Shabbat candles? You may hear something like, to bring the warmth, the light of Shabbat into our hearts. We go like this, and we bring meat, and we make this original practical reason for doing something meaningful. And I think we continue doing 3,000-year-old traditions, but the meaning behind them changes. And I don't think that takes away from the meaning. If we learn that the original 8-day Hanukkah was because it was second Sukkot, and now we have this miracle, and then we have the lights, which ironically was touchy-feely, the light of redemption, and then we have actual lights. I don't think that takes away the meaning of it. That our traditions stay the same, but our meanings change behind them. Most of what we do had a practical reason. We sit with bodies. We're supposed to sit with our loved ones' bodies, right, before they're buried. Well, the original reason was, to keep the animals away. But that's not fun to say to someone. And now we can say, oh, because we don't want to leave them alone, their soul is still with them. Just because the original reason no longer holds true, like eternal lamps, the eternal lamp means so much more to us now than just, like the eternal lamp is a symbol to us. But the eternal lamp was just to see at night once upon a time. Right? So I don't think that it has to take away the meaningfulness of the miracle just because it came after.
Just fun.
I
like that.
That's my soapbox. All right, because we made it up. We made it up is not a good enough answer for me. I'm okay with we made it up.
But you know what? Talking about all this food has made me very hungry for lunch.
We should have had. We eat during we never eat during the day.
Lunch.
Yeah, I'm eating lunch at 9 o'clock. When's our last meeting? 9 o'clock. Okay, so it is 2 minutes to done. We want to thank you right?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. And
Thank you for coming.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. Light your menorahs. Chag Habanot, sixth
Oh.
day. I like that.
And we're having a very neat program Friday night. So
Friday night?
Friday
Oh,
night
see,
is
that's
Sue
right.
Horowitz, who is
Okay.
a fabulous musician.
Now Hanukkah's
But
really over then.
Hanukkah's over.
Okay, good. Thank God.
But she is bringing a
Oh, E.J. Cohen.
E.J. Cohen, who is she's going to interpret with sign language the prayers
But it's
as
not just
we
interpret,
say
right? It's
them.
like some kind of like spiritual interpretation. What did she say?
A little bit of
Wow.
Like, yeah.
yeah. So it's really neat. So please join us Friday.
It
at
was
6.
Debbie Friedman's interpreter. You know, it's like
She's
E.J.
really
Cohen
awesome.
was Debbie Freeman's. She worked with Sue. We had her. She was just on one of our services. Yeah, Rochelle.
E.J.